Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast, where we talk all things Commander. And this week, we are going over the top cards from Foundations. Joined with me is Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. How are you doing, Seth?
I'm doing good. I am super excited for this set, so it should be a good one.
Krim, the Asian Avenger. How are you doing?
Morning. Pretty excited for what looks to be a core set, which is rare for me.
Budget Commander Tomer. What's up?
I love this set. I found out something interesting about myself. I love waifus.
Wait, what?
There's so many waifus. There's so many waifus on my list. It's crazy. What about
Oh,
you, Richard?
boy.
Are you a waifu believer?
I don't have any waifus on
Godfather?
my list. I don't have any waifus. I have the
Damn,
Godfather
you missed out.
Richard. We're gonna have to chime in on Tomer's waifus. Apparently, this was a waifu tier list today. But Foundation. So there's a lot of cards in Foundations, right? So there's Foundations itself. There's Jumpstart 25, J25, which is called Foundations Jumpstart, and then also just 3 random cards in Foundations Commander. But those are just reprints. But there's tons of cards. We filtered through all of them to figure out the best cards for Commander this week. But before we do that, today's show is brought to you by Ultimate Guard, premium protection for your trading cards. All the gaming accessories we use on this channel are from Ultimate Guard. So all the deck boxes, sleeves, and play mats you can get over at ultimateguard.com. And also Card Conduit, the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. You can skip all the typing, time, and work associated with buy listing. Their curated service lets you send in as many cards as you want with buy list value of $1 or more, and you pay just a 5% service fee. You can use their sorted service where you list and sort your cards and pay only 2%. You get a detailed report and fast payment once your order is processed. You can get 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/mtggoldfish. So thank you to our sponsors, and it's time for the Ultimate Guard comment of the week. So last week, we talked about tech cards from the largest Magic convention, MagicCon Vegas. Top comment, Cassie7611. It was so cool meeting you all at MagicCon. You were so kind and welcoming, and I'm gonna treasure that playmat you signed forever. Thank you so much.
Aww. Well, thanks for meeting us. That's the best part of MagicCon, right? Getting to like meet so many people and all the fans. So that always makes my MagicCon weekends, at least.
That's the
Yeah.
whole point of it. It's like that's all the thing I look forward to the most is meeting everybody. So it's great. It's great to know
You know
that
what?
people.
Yeah, that's exactly why we're there. So it's always an honor to get to sign or take a photo or just even hear you
And
say
it wasn't even a Richard comment this week. There you
Yeah.
go.
I mean,
Yeah,
everyone,
Richard
everyone
died.
was so
We
nice at
broke it.
MagicCon, unlike the YouTube comments. Imagine we go to MagicCon, it's just all YouTube comments there.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Oh,
I would
I would have the
I
time
would
of my
love
life
to
at
see-
MagicCon, wouldn't I?
Are you kidding me? You know how funny that would be if people just said what they said online in person? I would be like, oh, God, geez, no. Let's see you say it in person.
All right. Top cards from Foundations. So FDN and J25. I'm gonna kick things off. I am calling this the best card of the set, but I'm not very confident.
Okay.
You know how Maro has a storm scale? I have a Swords to Plowshares scale where like 10,
Good.
I'm 100% confident. That's Swords to Plowshares, that it sucks. And then 0, I'm like not confident at all. I'm gonna put this at a 5 at my rating here. So this could be the greatest card ever, or it could flop. I am not sure, but I think it has potential. And the card is called Lunar Insight. So 2 and a blue, 3 mana, sorcery. Draw a card for each different mana value among non-land permanents you control. So if you have a 1-drop, a 2-drop, a 0-drop, a 3-drop, you count all the unique numbers up, you draw that many cards. Finally, we've caught up to green card draw, boys.
Blue's doing it.
In blue, we've done it. You can pay 3 mana and potentially draw like 5 cards, 6 cards. You could, you're better than 1 mana per card or 1 card per mana. The downside is if you you got farewelled and you have
Oh
this,
no!
and
I'm
you're
not
drawing 0.
Say board wife.
You're drawing
Say
0,
zero.
right? So, but I think you can maneuver this to draw 3 more often than not, which would make this a premium card draw spell. So I'm calling this one of the best card draw spells, I think. Like you burst card draw spells. What do you guys think? Do you guys think this is too conditional? Do you think it's actually gonna work out correctly?
I think this card is great, but I do think it's a little conditional as far as what decks you can put it in. So you want to be a deck that's like adding permanents to the battlefield. I think this is going to be at its worst in like a spell slinger deck or something where you're more about like putting spells on the stack. But if you're a deck that's like playing a bunch of permanents, I think it's kind of an auto include because the baseline's what? Draw 3 for 3 is what we want. As long as we're getting 3 or more cards. And I think that's pretty realistic. Maybe a little worse than the Richard meta actually because you're not a mana rock believer. I think it actually plays really well with mana rocks because that's easy mana values on the battlefield. Also worth mentioning, 0 count. So if you have a token like a treasure or a blood or something, that's kind of like a freebie. So I feel like it should be easy enough to get a draw 3 out of this. And then if you get any more than that, it's just upside. So as long as you're like putting permanents on the battlefield, I think the card easy auto include.
I mean, the card looks sweet, right? It's only 3 mana, and I think with so many things producing treasures and all these like tokens now, you can probably get a 0 on there, maybe have a 2 and a 3. Like it seems like you need to do a lot more just because you have to have stuff for this to be good. But on average, I think you could probably just get there without even trying. I don't think you're actually gonna have to put that much effort into drawing 3 here. So I think this card's pretty sweet, and if you have more than that, that's even better, right? So I think this card's kind of nuts as well.
I'm a believer. I'm going to be trying it out. Like if it draws 3 consistently, I'm very happy with it. If it draws more than that, that's just a cherry on top. It's only bad like after a board wipe or something. It won't like help you refill your hand if you just got wiped. But outside of that, it seems very solid. It doesn't seem like too risky, so I really like it.
And even the board wipe thing doesn't seem that bad, right? Like, yes, you get farewelled, it's a bummer, but you only really need to add a couple more permanents to the battlefield, and then you're at least getting like a divination out of it. So it doesn't seem like, I don't know, like that much of a deal breaker to me.
And the extended art, the full art, the alternate version of this card. I saw Seth open it in foil.
Oh, it looks
in his
so
Foundations
good.
box.
Oh, in person, it
so
looks
good.
so good.
It looks so good.
Ponder
because-
reference
Yeah, and the moon.
for
the moons
Pictionary,
are all
Seth.
foil.
Next time you Pictionary.
Oh no, this is gonna confuse him. He's gonna think Ponder's Lunar Insight now.
Oh, yeah, it does kind of look pondery.
All right, Seth, hit us up with the card.
All right. I wanna know what you think about this card, because this is a card that I'm really hyped for, and I think it's gonna be good, but then I'm not sure. And that card is Abyssal Harvester. So it's a 3-mana 3/2 Demon Warlock. It's a black card. And then its ability is tap to exile target creature card from a graveyard, any graveyard that was put there this turn, and you get a token copy of it, but it's a nightmare, and then you can't have any other nightmares. You lose all your other nightmares. So the first thing I thought of is this is kind of like a fairer black fairy artisan. Like, it's the black version because you need things to die to use it, but this is a way that you can be getting a token copy of something every single turn, and in some ways it has upsides over fairy artisan, right? Because once you get a good token copy of something, you can just choose not to make any more and keep that around for as long as you want to, or until it dies, and then you can make another one. So I feel like just tap to reanimate something that went to the graveyard this turn with the upside of token synergies. This card's gotta be at least fun, right? Like, how good is this? Can you just run this in a like generic black deck, or do you have to have like token synergies and other payoffs? Because I feel like you could just jam this and it's probably going to be good enough.
I think you want to put this in an aristocrat deck. Like, the way I see this is like if your deck runs like Fleshbag Marauder effects, you know, where it's like you play a creature, it sacrifices itself, and everybody has to sacrifice a creature too. I think that's its best case scenario. Because like, imagine you have Abyssal Harvester and you have like the 3 fleshbags or 4 fleshbags in your deck. You play that, and then either you can get back the Fleshbag Marauder immediately to make everybody sacrifice again, or you just get the best thing, the other best thing that your opponent sacrificed, right? So I think in Aristocrats, it's like a very great engine because you can like sacrifice something, immediately make a copy, sacrifice that, and then next turn sacrifice something, get a copy, and then keep doing it. But I don't know about just jamming it just like for value. But like, if I'm in a sacrifice deck, I'm like, hell yeah, this is like awesome.
When you say sacrifice, you also omitted edict heavy decks too.
Yeah.
So
I think it's even better than that, Krim, because if you read this carefully,
Sure.
it doesn't say from the graveyard from the battlefield. It's just to the
Ooh,
graveyard.
yeah.
Oh, mill.
So it's like a
Anywhere.
really good
Good to
mill
know.
card, right? You just
Okay,
mill
mill.
everyone and then just tap this and get a copy of whatever the best thing you milled is. Like, that actually
Yeah.
seems pretty strong, right?
Does this make mill
that
playable?
was
I don't
where I was
know.
going with it.
Sort of body of
after we
mind.
had the discussion with
Sort of
Edicts. Just
body
gotta-
of mine.
Just sort of body of mine was already good, and now you gave it an even better
Ooh.
support card. Oh,
Okay.
this is gonna be sweet. And like between that and all the soul shatters that I run and things like that, I think this card is kind of awesome. And it's only 3 mana.
Only
I think
three-
that's the best part about this. It costs no mana to activate. Just all around a solid card.
like, if you can reanimate one thing, it's probably worth it. And if you ever get 2 or 3 or 4 things out of this because it sticks around, it's going to be insane, right? I don't know. You
Yeah.
seem skeptical, Richard.
I got to
Yeah.
call up
Yeah.
Phil, and I know he would say, "Get the F word out of your mouth, Seth. This is not fairy artisan, not even close. This is like unplayable, though. Like, what is the going rate
Whoa.
for a creature that taps to reanimate? Isn't it like 4 mana? What is a creature
it's
that
like-
just taps to reanimate
we
out of any
have-
graveyard?
Creatures
There's like a
that do
Doom
that.
Necromancer, but that's 3 mana, and then you have to pay 1 mana, tap it, and sacrifice it.
What is it
Right.
like? What's Hell's Caretaker? Like, I thought we have cards
Ooh,
that
that
are
one's
That
just, like,
also
that one's
sacrifices.
bad.
Yeah,
there's a
all-
bunch
Oh, you
that
have to
sack themselves.
sacrifice?
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
there's not
this
many I
stays.
can think of that stick
like
around.
you need to untap with this thing, then you need to kill something, and all you got was 1 reanimation. So I think Tomer's right. You need aristocrats to keep like sacking the nightmares to keep making them. But it's a lot of work to just reanimate. Like, why don't you just play reanimate?
It's not
Why
a
don't you
lot
just
of
play
work.
like just 1 mana reanimate, call it a day, then
It's
like
repeatable.
try to jam this value card, and you got to untap multiple times to attempt to get value. And we meme about farewell, but like, one, we play the wrath meta. If something dies, everything dies. But
Yeah.
if the commentators believe Swords to Plowshares is the most common removal, it exiles, so you can't even use it with this. So there's a couple hoops you got to jump through, and at the end you just get to reanimate. Like, can't we do
I
that
guess
in an
I
easier
guess it's
fashion?
got hoops for decks that Richard plays because that makes sense. But for
Well,
me,
the hoop is you got to untap with this thing successfully, right? Like, that's hoop number 1.
Sure.
Hoop
That's
number
true.
2.
But who's
something
gonna
needs
board
to
wipe this?
die?
are they gonna board wipe this? Because pretty much this forces your opponent now in the situation where they have to answer this, and that means okay, you can board wipe or not, up to you, or you let me untap with this. You want
All
to
did was
waste a
reanimate. Like, you
But-
did all this work for a
That's good.
point in time reanimate, right? Like, it has to hit the yard that turn. If it hit earlier, you can't get it, right? So
I guess it's better in
I'm skeptical.
Rakdos colors if you can give it haste. Then you can start reanimating the turn you cast it.
Arena of
Or
Glory
like a lightning
or
grease or
boots.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
lightning
yeah.
greaves.
Boots, yeah. There's ways to haste it up.
But you're
Those are
jamming
bits-
it every deck, it says?
You
I-
do need to work for it.
I'm just going to try playing it in my black decks for value. We'll see if it sticks. But for the short term, I'm just going to jam it in black decks and see what happens because it just seems like it could be really powerful. In worst case, I think it's going to be super fun. So
I'm with you.
All right, Krim, hit us up with the card.
All right, so my card is kind of to piggyback off of what we just kind of talked about. I
Wait,
I think
this
y'all
card
know
doesn't
I was
hurt-
excited.
That
for-
doesn't help with that card, though.
I know it
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
exactly, but
you just
Look,
need 14
Edicts.
creatures.
Just need 14
I,
creatures.
look,
Yeah, you're fine.
look,
You,
Edicts
you
are
have
my
a magic
jam.
count of 2.
Even if I have to sack my own board, I do not care because Blasphemous Edict is here. Which, by the way, they have to make a cycle now. But like the main
No.
thing is Blasphemous Edict, which is a 5 mana sorcery. You may pay black rather than pay the spell's mana cost if there are 13 or more creatures on the battlefield. Each player sacrifices 13 creatures of their choice. So, yes, everyone's going to get caught up in it could cost 1 mana, which I think will come up more often than people are giving it credit for, because I think between 4 players, that's only two and a half creatures, three creatures per player, right? And then some, right? But
3 and a bit.
I 3.5, right? 3.5, 2. Yeah. So point is, I'm actually not even looking at it costing 1. I'm talking about it just as a 5 mana, make everybody sack 13 creatures. That alone, this slots in as a black sweeper 2 or 3 for me. I think this is really good. It gets around all the indestructible stuff. It gets around ward. Like, you know what I mean? I guess all sweepers do that, but it gets around the indestructible part, right? Which is the most important part here because everything has indestructible. And if you're telling me there's the off chance I can pay 1 mana to do this, I'm going to take it. This is board wipe 3 for sure.
I mean,
I'm with you, Krim. I'm with you.
Is this, so Toxic Deluge, Black Board Wipe number 1. Is this number 2? I think there's actually like a pretty decent argument. You can argue Damnation. I guess if you look expensive, yeah, I guess you can argue Meat Hook. Decree of Pain, I guess we play a lot, even though it's kind of very expensive. I think there's an argument this is the second black board wipe that I add to my decks. Like, it deals with indestructible stuff. It triggers sacrifice stuff if that's something your deck cares about. Plus, it's just like a solid Wrath. And I think, judging by our games of Commander Clash, there's a decent chance that, like, some reasonable percentage of the time it's going to be 1 mana. And when it's 1 mana, then this card's absurd, right? So I think the upside's enough to make this Wrath number 2 for me.
We have way too, like, I want to say we have way too much indestructible these days. I feel like they keep printing it out and they keep giving it to white like candy. Like, we just got Flare Fortitude, which is amazing, and we got Dawn's Truce, which is amazing, and I put it in both my, like, I'm putting it on my white decks, and I'm just like, if you're not like sacrificing or exiling my stuff or like cyclonic rifting my stuff, you're just not gonna get rid of my creatures anymore because there's too many answers. So, like, I do very much value just the fact that you can sacrifice it or like a Meat Hook and you can lower the toughness so they actually die. Because, like, indestructible is like there's way too much of it and it's way too good. And I just, like, I want to have answers to, like, these common protection spells, and this bypasses it. It's lovely. Definitely worth 3, and casting it for 1 is just, like, super sweet.
So I've learned about this card for like 3 days, and I flip-flopped like maybe 4 times between whether I think this is good or bad between then. I've come to the conclusion this is the best Wrath that I will never play. Kind of similar to Farewell. So, like, here's my Wrath tier list for black. If I'm only mono black, right? Toxic Deluge, Boom Pile, Meat Hook Massacre, Decree of Pain, Heartless Conscription, and then even then I would still go to things like Oblivion Stone, Perilous Vault, things that like sweep more than creatures, essentially, right? So I don't actually think I will ever play this. However, it has cute combos. So I just said that, but next deck I build is going in because I'm playing Thrilling Encore. So that's the thing that's like 5 mana, reanimate everything that died this turn, including your opponent's stuff, right? So you have the potential to do combos with this where you go 1 mana, Wrath the board, and then mass reanimate that same turn. So you could do Thrilling Encore, you could do Rise of the Dark Realms. So you can do stuff like that where the 1 mana actually matters. But as a general purpose Wrath, I'm like, it gets around Flawless, which is important. But we have Toxic Deluge for that. And Meat Hook does that too. And then Boom Pile. You guys
no, you lost me at Boom Pile.
This is Wrath creatures.
I'm talking about a Wrath, not like a
get it out
like a maybe Wrath.
Because you need to wrap the enchantments and the artifacts and everything with it, right?
Richard, sometimes you may miss the coin flip, and that's all the time the artifact or whatever deck needed to win the game.
Richard never misses
you
the
had a
flip.
chance.
Now, or
You
else
had a
we'll
chance
win
and
the
you
game.
took it. This
Oh,
one
don't
is
worry,
like,
guys.
whatever.
I got
Artifact
Boom
deck's gonna
Pile.
win. Let me untap with my 60 Smothering Tide treasures. It's fine, guys. Like, you know? Like,
No, but then you could run run an Oblivion Stone, something that actually gets the job done when you need.
okay, yeah, an Oblivion Stone, right? So Toxic Deluge, Oblivion Stone, Meat Hook Massacre. Like, how many are we Crim? Are we running 10 rats? Like, you know, the rat
10
slot
rat
is like
setup.
very, you know, very tight, right? And especially since if you want to run 10 rats, the real answer is like run 6 and like 3 tutors. So you have access to 10 rats, but then you have access to something else if you don't need the rat. And then even in that case, you don't have room for the edict. So that's why I declared it one of the best rats that I'll never run because you know, like it's too far down the list.
I
I
feel
agree
like
that you need, look, if you're mono black, you need to get rid of artifacts, and that's why I run Oblivion Stone in my Toshiro deck. But I'm running this in Toshiro as well because for the exact same reason. I run Filling Uncard as one of my main win conditions.
Yeah.
This is going to be so sweet in that deck. Oh my god! And I even run what's Forbidden Orchard to give people spirits because then I can kill them to get Toshiro triggers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I can feed the count on this for to lower it to 1.
You
If,
can also
we're
try
at,
to
like,
play
12.
around this with Field of the Dead or something. Like you could maybe amass more than 13 creatures on your end. Like if you're like a token deck or something, you can go wide enough that this becomes a one-sided wrath as well.
You're just convincing me it's better and better.
no, my
I mean,
tap to
yeah, right? It
reanimate
depends
thing
on your
has too many. My tap to reanimate thing has too many hoops, but then we're getting up to 15 creatures to turn heartless. To turn this
The
around.
Forbidden Orchard deck.
I'm not even gonna get there. I'm not even gonna argue though. Well, what if I get
Maybe
more
the
than 13
Suva of the
creatures?
Forbidden
Just
Orchard, you
this
can
alone
give 2
is good.
creatures per
I
turn.
mean, you get Dousing Dagger plants. Like, oh, we can get there.
Richard, there ain't no way. Also, I just have to give a chuckle that once again, Richard holding it down for Boom Pile.
It's so bad.
Oh, okay. You know what's funny though? At MagicCon, Phil turned his Ondu inversion into a boom pile because he's like, I need to go. So we're gonna cast Ondu inversion and we're gonna pretend it's boom pile, and then he lost the flip. And then he died.
Oh, yeah, you just are we
Wait, hold on. So you're arguing
championing
for or
Boom Pile? I
against
don't know.
Boom Pile?
I'm just giving you a funny boom pile moment. Isn't that
Oh, God.
joy in life worth way more than whatever sweaty percentages you get out of whatever you play?
Fair.
Like, look at the fun entertainment
like-
we get.
I mean, yes, but also when I spend 4 to 5 mana for a Wrath, I would like to actually get the Wrath.
You don't have the choice. You're in black, right? Like, yeah. If I'm gonna play a farewell, if I can, but in other colors, you don't have the choice to kill. Like, you have to play Withering Torment, Seth. You're gonna play that. You're gonna play Boom Pile.
I
Right?
mean,
You gotta
no,
play- you know.
Boom Pile is good. Boom Pile is good, but I still think this card has a home. I don't think I rank Boom Pile as highly as you do. Like, yes, I want a way to blow up artifacts and enchantments in my black deck, but it's not Wrath number 2. That's
But
just
this is number 2.
that's
then?
insanity.
Put this before O-Stone. Like I agree with Tomer. If you don't believe in Boom Pile, you go O-Stone, and then you go Perilous Vault. Then you start getting more and more mana. But
1 mana though. 1 mana and sacrifice. I think
1 mana is
I think
hot.
it's good.
1 mana is hot.
Look at Blasphemous
Tomer.
Act.
Can you wait for Blasphemous Farewell? It's coming.
Okay, so speaking of sacrifice decks, speaking of aristocrats, I'm going to bring you waifu number 1. This is Evereth, Viceroy of Plunder. So it's a 3-mana black legendary creature vampire soldier. However, it has a commander identity of Rakdos. So it's a 2/2 flyer. Sacrifice another creature or artifact. You put a +1/+1 counter on Evereth. If the sacrifice permanent was a treasure, it gains lifelink until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. And whenever it dies, you may pay 1 and a hybrid Rakdos, so either black or red. And when you do, Evereth deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. So I played this on an upcoming Commander Clash, and I really, really like this legendary creature. I think it's really, really sweet. In an aristocrat shell, you could throw it in the 99, and then it's a repeatable sack outlet. It's not instant speed sack outlet, it has to be sorcery, but it's a sack outlet that grows and grows and grows like a carrion crawler or whatever. I forget the one drop that's similar to that, but it has flying. So it's a legitimate threat. And if you eat a treasure, it has lifelink. So it's a huge threat that can give itself lifelink. And then when you sacrifice it or whatever, if it dies, you pay 2 mana and you just do a silly amounts of damage to all your opponents. And if she has lifelink because of the treasure or whatever, you get that much life back. It's like a giant gray merchant of Asphodel when she dies. I think she's super fun in the command zone because she's like aristocrats meets Voltron. You can use her as like a sack outlet early on, and then later you just smash Fae for commander damage or you just kill people with the burn ability. And then you can also just throw her in the 99 of aristocrat sack, which is a sack outlet that also just kills people. And I like that. I like killing people and I like sack outlets. So heck yeah.
Are you sure the lifelink works like that? I actually don't know how it works. So if you give her lifelink and then she dies, does the power thing, you gain it all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
this is crap.
Piru
It
or
turns
whatever,
your
yeah.
treasures into food essentially, right? You can sack them, pump her, get lifelink, and then a gray merchant out the door.
Can you imagine like this?
I'm a waifu believer, Tomer.
If you have like a
sold me.
pitiless plunder on the battlefield, you sacrifice a bunch of creatures as you have on the battlefield. They all turn into treasures thanks to pitiless plunder. Then you sacrifice all the treasures. You just smack somebody for a bajillion damage, and then you just like fling her at somebody else, and they all die. Ugh.
Yeah, this card's so ridiculous because it also sacks artifacts, right? And we've talked so much over the last year or two about how easy it is to make treasures, to make clues and bloods. So it seems like very easy to just turn this into like a one-shot kill threat, and then maybe you can kill the entire table with it too. So I think you're right. It's a cool commander, and I would play it in the 99 and pretty much any sack deck, I think. Like, I think it's because it combines together like this sack payoff where it's growing as you sack stuff with being a free sack outlet, which is a really strong place to be.
Yeah, this card is super sweet. There's actually this jumpstart line from Foundations is stacked with like actual powerful waifus. So I understand Tomer's belief in the waifus, and I do find it kind of funny that like this card will not only dumpster people on board, but apparently emotionally because of the anime art. So
I think it's
that
turned
kind
me
of
into
funny.
a weeb. I think this has finally turned me into a weeb. I'm like, I didn't like any of this anime art before. Like editor, you could show like Smothering Tithe or like the Dragon in Heat or whatever. Not a fan. But
Not
this
that one.
yeah, show that one, editor. I think it was Rapacious Dragon. Don't ask me why I know that. Anyway, but this one, I'm now weeb. You want me over with it.
Full-blown weeb.
It's also a 3-mana 2/2 flying at base. Like, it is so overtuned, right? Like it doesn't even need to do anything. Like, you literally just like play it for 3 mana, sack 1 treasure, and then sack it. It domes everyone for 3. You gain 9, right? Like, oh, that's actually pretty good, right?
Kind of insane.
You can gain 12 in 1 attack, right? Like, oh my god, right? Like, disgusting.
Yeah, the life gain's huge, and it's a vampire, so there you get some maybe extra relevance there, especially in like sacky vampire decks. That was a theme for like Lost Caverns of Ixalan. You had like Carvello or whatever that had like vampires, but we want to sack things, so it seems really good in vampire sack decks too.
All right. I'm next. All right, next card. I've got Raise the Past. 2 white sorcery. So 4 mana value. Return all creatures with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is why I never play Farewell, boys. we got to reanimate the Cartographer's Hawk and
Spirited Companions.
All the ketchup ramps.
Isn't there a card?
I mean, it's cheaper Ascend from Avernus. Right?
Yes.
I always play Ascend from Avernus. All my creatures cost 2 or less anyway. I'm just paying more mana for Ascend to Avernus. So Raise the Past. So good. And then I guess what you can't double trigger, right? Del needs 3, right? So you can't get Delny to double trigger. You can't card
unless
draw
Delny's on
this.
board.
Yeah, Delny needs to be on board. But I jam this on my decks because I just play every deck is a white weenie deck, and this brings them all back. This is a 4 mana return all creatures. I guess the contenders would be Return to the Ranks, Ascend from Avernus, Rally the Ancestors, Dusk Dawn puts them all back in your hand. And you have to cast them again, but these are staples in white, so I think Raise the Past will go up there as well.
So let me ask you, Richard, because I think this card's very good, and I love these kind of cards in Aristocrats decks, decks. But my question is, how many creatures mana value 2 or less do you need to be playing before you're running this card? Because I think that's what I run into. A lot of my decks, I got a few cheap creatures, but a lot of my creatures are 3 mana, 4 mana, 5 mana. Like, how many do I need before I'm like, okay, I should put this in my deck? Any idea?
Math is for blockers. I don't know, Seth.
Like, is this a Richard staple, or is this a staple for me too? Like, does this just work really well in the decks that you play because you play so many 2-drop weenies? Or can like the people in the audience watching this, should they also jam it in their decks? Or are they going to be like, I don't have any creatures. What is this card doing?
So I think you got to play
Richard
weenies.
staple.
You got to play weenies, like any weenie type deck. So like Aristocrats type decks, right?
Okay,
Where you might actually have a lot of weenies.
Yeah.
If you play full catch-up ramp suite, right? Like I can just list you like unlimited weenies that you should be playing, right? Like Esper Sentinel, Wayfarer, Weathered Wayfarer, Stoneforge Mystic, Loyal Warhound, Spirited Command, blah blah blah. Like if you play all those cards, this thing is like reanimate your whole graveyard. But if you don't play those cards, then you gotta take a look, right? You're like, am I reanimating anything useful? Because if it's like 3 creatures, like that's not worth, right? So you gotta take a look. But most white decks will play all the catch-up ramp. Right? All the catch-up ramp, for the most part, is 2 or less. So you do get all those bodies back.
Yep, that makes sense. Plus you get Spirited Companion and Esper Sentinel or whatever. Also seems good in like aristocrat style decks. But what do you think, Tom? Are you in on this card?
I like it. I like it most in Aristocrats deck again. I think I'm just like I'm just high on Aristocrats right now because I feel like it's be great to just like sacrifice your board and return everything. It's like a cosmic intervention or whatever. But it also works well self-mill, I guess. Like a weenie self-mill deck if that exists.
For when someone mind skinners half your library into your graveyard, you're cooking.
And you're like, sweet.
Hey. Well, what you're not accounting for what happens if the Raise the Past gets milled, all right? But I am gonna say though, Raise the Past does seem interesting. It does feel kind of Richardy. Like by the way, it does seem interesting, but it's gotta be a deck loaded with nothing but Spirited Companions, which then makes me wonder, what am I doing? Like,
what about your human deck, Krim? Don't you have a human deck that's like pretty aggro? Like, do you think this is good enough to make the cut there? Because you probably got like Champion the Parish and a bunch of cheap stuff, or is it not enough?
No, because the best humans you want to see are at 3. They're at 3. A lot of them are at 3. Yeah, there's good ones, right? I'm not saying there aren't good 2-drop humans, but yeah, most of them at 3, and I would rather just play whatever Ascend to Avernus. But we did get a new card that I didn't get to put on my list fully because I could only choose a few. But Alesha is the one that I'm playing in my human deck. The one from Foundations.
Sick. Yeah, it reanimates every single turn.
Yeah.
That's a human.
All right. Seth, hit us with a card.
Oh, we got a good one. So this is a card that only goes in one specific archetype, but in that archetype, it's going to be so good. And that is Dionus? Let's go with Dionus, Elvish Archdruid. So it is a 4-mana 3/3 legendary elf druid. And it simply says, elves you control have, whenever this creature becomes tapped during your turn, untap it, and then put a +1/+1 counter on it. This ability only triggers once each turn. So just so it's clear, because it's a little confusing, it's kind of like Nadu in the sense that this is giving each of your elves that ability. So it's not you get to untap one thing one time each turn. You get to do that for each of your elves. And what do elves do? One of the first thing I think of when I think of elves decks is mana dorks. You have all these Llanowar elves that are making mana and just like producing tons and tons of mana. This essentially works like a weird Panharmonicon for those effects. It doubles them, right? You tap your Llanowar elves for a mana. This is going to not only put a counter on it, but it's going to untap it. So now it's tapping for 2 mana instead of 1 mana. When you get to things like Morrowind or Elvish Archdruid that can make huge amounts of mana, this is a really scary card. Imagine just like turn 1 Llanowar, turn 2 Elvish Archdruid, turn 3, run this out, double tap your Elvish Archdruid. You're dropping like 6 drops, 8 drops on turn 3. So I think this is just an auto-include in basically any elf deck, and I think it'll be kind of popular as a commander too. I don't know if it's like the strongest elf commander, but it's one of the more unique elf commanders, because usually elf commanders are like, I'm gonna overrun you and win the game. This is like doing something a little bit different. So I think this card's gonna be super popular and super powerful in elf decks.
Wait,
upset at you, Seth.
You think it's doing something different? Isn't this just what elves do all the time? I feel like I see elves untap, they tap, they do something else happens because they have an Archdruid, which now relies on like a what is it, Sentinel?
Nettle Sentinel, yeah.
Nettle Sentinel, and they're gonna untap. They're gonna do this 1,000 times. You're gonna bounce back to their hand, and then you're gonna get elf balled. Like at the end of the day, I know I'm getting elf balled. No matter what this might lead you to believe, it's just gonna expedite the elf balling.
But it puts a +1/+1 counter on things, Grim. Have we had a +1/+1 counter elf commander yet?
Need the crater hoof to beat me down. Great.
I love this card. The only thing I'm sad about is I didn't get to put it on my list because Seth put it first, but it's another waifu. It's another waifu. And I've never played elves before. I've never really resonated with Lathril, but this waifu has got me tinkering with an elf deck for the first time ever. And I think it's legit. I think it's better than Lathril, honestly. Like the fact that like Seth said, because you could just, the ramp potential is insane, and the +1/+1 counters. Yeah, we meme about it, but I think adding that additional synergy can be very powerful because it opens the doors to like things that elves kind of suck at, which is like getting board wiped. So like Inspiring Call, for example, 3 mana instant, draw a card for each creature you control, +1/+1 counter on it, and they get indestructible. Like that's like insane protection. And then imagine if like all your elves tap, they get a +1/+1 counter on them, and they have like mana available now, and somebody tries to wipe you, and you just have like, oof, I draw like a billion cards, and all my things are indestructible. Like, oh, it opens the doors for like really good payoffs, and I'm such a fan. And it has waifu art, like there's no downside.
Okay. It's a slight upgrade to elf decks, but I think I'm with Krim here. Like, it doesn't fundamentally change your deck. You're a little faster, right? But we have effects like Vitalize, which is like an instant just untaps all creatures, right? So if you wanted to go ham tapping and untapping things, you could do that. But it doesn't solve the fundamental elf ball problem, which is you get board wiped before you kill someone. Like maybe it does because you're like maybe a turn faster
Speeds
now,
up.
you can kill people, right? Like, but if you get board wiped, you're still super sad and you're probably dead. But yeah, so I think it's if you have an elf deck, you put it in it, and then your elf deck gets a few percentage points better. But I don't think it like crazily changes anything.
Build around it. You build around it.
though.
It's
It's
so
so
fun.
fun. It's
Call
a
it.
plus-1,
Yeah.
Like,
Hell
I
yeah.
mean, if this is your commander, you put Inspiring Call in. But if it's in the 99,
Yeah.
do you really put
No.
it in? No, it's
No,
not,
no,
right?
no.
Yeah.
No.
There's also the land that gives you +1/+1 counters too, Oran Reef or whatever. But
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
It's obviously good.
hit us with a card.
Okay. So I asked, and I feel like whoever at Wizards is listening, because we're getting more of it, and I'm getting happy about it. It's the card I'm choosing to bring up right now is Scrawling Crawler. 3 mana artifact creature, Phyrexian construct, yada yada. 3/2. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player loses a life. So we've got more greed punishers. We've got more draw punishers, and I love it. And I love that they're now switching it to not just their second card that they've drawn. It's just whenever they draw a card. And that means the first one of their turn, the second one, doesn't matter. All of them, you're all taking damage. I love this. I want more of this. Oh God. Whoa. Look, I know I've driven the point home hard enough that, you know, greed needs to go punished. And this is that. We're getting more of it. Now give me more. Give me one on 1 mana. I want a draw punisher on every step of the curve. I already know I have the Parasite, but the Parasite relies on me having a red permanent. I just want a 1 mana 1/1 that just immediately dings you when you draw a card. It can do nothing else. I could give 2 craps. It could be a 0/1. I want draw punishers all the way up. I want a 10 mana one. I want a 9 mana. I want to go down. So yeah, this makes me so damn happy to see.
I'm glad Krim loves this card, but isn't this card kind of bad? Like, so here's how I think this plays out. So I get the draw punishing thing. That is a powerful effect. We've seen that with Orcish Bowmasters primarily, but other cards like that. What I imagine happens with this is you slam this, and me and Phil are playing with you, and we like drawing cards, and you're actually giving us an extra card each turn, and we're going to be like, well, let's take these extra cards that Krim is giving us and use that to either kill him or kill the crawler so then we can draw cards again. So I'm a little worried that because it's giving resources to the rest of the table, those resources are probably going to be used against you or against the crawler because it's just going to make people salty because people like drawing cards. So do you think this is actually like a good card, even with it giving each opponent a card each turn cycle?
It's colorless. It goes in any deck. I think this card will go slot just nicely. It's a Krim staple. because people already use their resources. So why not just hey,
You
I
might
drew
as
you
well
a card
embrace
along
it.
the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not embrace it? And on top of that, when has people spending their resources stopped a Nekusar, a Sheoldred,
Yeah.
I mean,
anything along those lines?
I do think it's good in like wheel decks or whatever. Like if you're actually like your goal is to do Nekuzar stuff, I think it's good. But just jamming it like a Bowmasters in every deck, that's where I'm a little more skeptical.
I mean, this is the Bowmaster curve, Seth. I Bowmaster you at the end of your turn. I play this, and then all of a sudden now I'm pinging all your
into
critters
winner
every turn. Yeah,
I think
winner,
this card would be a lot better without the Howling Mine effect. Like if it's just because it doesn't deal enough damage to kill it. Like Sheoldred kills you fast, right? Like this one kills you very slow. This is actually a better rate than Greed or like Phyrexian Arena, right? Like you take like 2 damage, draw a card, essentially, right? Like you draw your for your turn and then 1 extra here. And I think like Seth said, the whole table will just use their extra cards to kill this, but this isn't fast enough to kill them. So in an actual Nekusar deck, you probably have enough momentum to kill everyone with this. So I really like it there. But as a generic hater, I think it goes backwards, right? Like I think it's like it doesn't actually do what you want to do because of that Howling Mine effect. You're giving people resources to deal with it.
It's not Bowmaster, right? It's all there. I'm under no delusions here that this is better than Bowmaster because that card is nuts. But I think that this card, you got to remember, if they're playing one of these, maybe this alone won't be fast enough to get you. But I guarantee you, if they're playing this, this is not the only card that's going to ping you.
Yeah, you go Bowmasters into Crawler, it's rough. And also it's an artifact, so easily recurable. Like Buried Ruins,
also true.
Academy Ruins, like easy to get it back if you want, right?
I'm actually with Seth and Richard. I think they should have made this stronger. I think they should have done something like 2 damage each card, and then I'd be like, hell yeah. So Wizards of the Coast, if you're listening, make it even more powerful.
It's also a loss of life. It's not damage. So that's
so it gets around.
That's kind of relevant, right? Like,
yeah,
you can die through it to the One Ring or something, right?
Yeah, I like the concept. I like draw hate. And I want more of these, but I do think that I wouldn't just like jam it as like draw hate. I would put it in a wheel deck, but I'm definitely on board if they do like a mini Sheoldred. I don't know, like you deal 2 or something, but you don't gain the life, so it's fine.
You don't gain the life, you just deal 2.
I will also say, if Wizards wants to punish draw hate, do it this way. Like this is way more palatable than like Notion, Thief, or Hull Breacher effects. Like tack damage on there, make people die for drawing cards, perfectly fine. It's at least people get to keep enjoying the game. So I think this is the right direction to go. But if anything, I think they, like Tomer said, they could have juiced it a bit more, maybe.
Well, you got to remember, this is meant for, this is a set that's going to be in Standard as well. So we can juice it in Commander because we have double the life, but in Standard...
Make draw hate make draw hate's good in Standard too. Why not? Stupid
Owling
control
Mine?
players just
Owling
sitting around
Mine
drawing
was
cards.
a deck back in like 1999 or something like that.
Got to bring it back. Owling Mine 2025.
Right, Tomer, hit us with a card.
All right, I don't want to be accused of just a shameless weeb, so I got something for... the average Magic enjoyer, because like everybody loves dragons, right? Who in this Magic community doesn't like dragons? Well, I got something for you. Seth doesn't like dragons.
Dragons are fine, I guess.
He likes nothing about high fantasy.
What's
he doesn't
what's a dragon?
He doesn't actually like magic.
Is a dragon
rather
an
if it was
X-Men?
flavorless and artless. But anyway, so for most of us, Twinflame Tyrant is something that you should be keeping a track of. It's a 5-mana red creature dragon, 3/5 flying, and if a source you would control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals double that much damage instead. So this is like just your typical like one-sided Furnace of Wrath. Anything you're doing is going to deal double to your opponents, but it's on a 5-mana 3/5 flying dragon, which means it has a lot of synergy potential. Also, the rate for this double damage is already pretty good. 5 mana for this rate, I think it's good. But then it's on a 3/5, so it's swinging in the air for 6 damage, and it's a dragon. So if you have a dragon deck, like I have a dragon deck, I have a Perforos dragon deck, I'm windmill slamming this in. If you're like a Mirim enjoyer or a dragon enjoyer, but even if you're not like a dragon deck, if you're just like a burn deck or whatever, I don't know. It's just a good rate. It's just it feels like it's just like a more of a generically powerful, aggressive card, and I'm all about that.
How do you compare it to like Furnace Wrath Tome or some of the enchantment effects? Like, is there any worry that it's just gonna get swept up too often and you're like, I'd rather have an enchantment version, or doesn't that actually matter too much in 2024?
Well, I don't like the ones that like deal the damage to you. Like unless
They
it's
don't
like
double the
Dictate of
damage
the
to you,
Twin
yeah.
Gods, yeah.
Yeah.
If you could just drop it and then you all die, then I'm totally down. But I do like that it's a creature because like red has a lot of ways of like copying creatures until end of turn. You make a copy of it with like a twin flame effect. There's
Yeah.
a bunch of commanders that are like copy target creature, it gains haste, and then you sacrifice at an end step. So I mean, when you're doubling the damage twice, it's really good. Red is also the color of haste, so if it's an enchantment, yeah, it might survive sweepers longer, but I'm thinking about the now. I'm thinking about the now and the fact that I can give it haste, and that's another 6 damage all by itself. And then if I copy it, ooh la la, the damage, it goes crazy. So I actually like that it's on a creature because like I want to smash. I want to give it haste.
I feel like it's a good card. I just am not sure exactly where I'd play it. Like, if I was playing a dragon deck, I think I'd play it. But beyond that, I'm like, I don't know if I play enough decks that would actually want it. But I do think it's good at doing its job.
Copying it is super interesting.
Unsold.
So like in a dragon deck, absolutely cracked. I don't know why I said saying considering. It's like literally like the first dragon you put in, I think.
Yeah,
right?
good in
Because you
dragon.
have so many synergies. So
Yeah.
in red, you are probably playing Cursed Mirror. So you probably have at least one thing to copy it. You are probably playing Arena of Glory. So you could definitely haste this thing in.
Yeah.
Normally when you play a doubling effect though, you win the game. Right? So like attempting to untap with this seems like a folly, right? So I don't know about playing this on curve and like trying to go to town. But if you're gonna win the game, would you not just play Isengard Unleashed or whatever, Tomer? Like triple damage, stop the fogs, make sure everyone's dead this turn and call it a day, right? Like I feel that is the safer option.
I run both though.
How do you
Also,
have
like
room for all these cards?
because I like damage. I like doubling the damage version. It's kind of my jam. But
Like,
also
there's
imagine you have,
insult
like,
to injury too, which
Kiki-Jiki.
is 3 mana, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's a lot cheaper to pull off, and then it also prevents the fog. Like the worst thing you do is suit up your whole team's do like 8 times damage, then someone fogs you, and you're like, oh my god,
Yeah.
right? So
But
I
I
don't know
think
where this
there's-
actually goes.
I think there's like a lot of decks in red that like care about the creature part of it, like Kiki-Jiki, Feldon, Cursed Mirror,
Yes.
Delina, Jaxis.
Yeah.
If you're like dragons, you do Molten Echoes and then you just copy it whenever you're doing a thing. Or Thion, Mirror March, if Phil believers are out there, Rionia. So there's like a lot of stuff that are like we can only copy it if it's a creature. So I think it's better there. Otherwise, yeah, if I had to choose between them, I'd go Isengard and Leash, but it's also a dragon, man.
I
Dragons are
don't know.
cool. It's got two
Are we
heads.
just gonna assume this is only a dragon deck? Because I want this in my Lord of Pain deck. Are you
Yeah,
kidding me?
man.
Roiling Vortex every upkeep, baby.
Ooh, now you get me
Slap
for
that on
2
there.
each turn.
You laugh, but that's so real.
Throw in a
That's
Scrawling
so
Crawler
real.
and we're
Oh,
Scrawling Crawler and we have a deck. Yeah, we did it.
I genuinely want this card though in my like burn deck. So between this Sulfuric Vortex, dude, this card absolutely slaps, and I think it is a fun card to have. And because, you know, as you had mentioned, it's attached to a creature, a Rakdos deck is much more likely able to reanimate it, right? That feels a lot easier. So I like this card a whole lot.
Also nice that there's no restriction to like non-combat damage or whatever. We get a lot of those recently that are like, oh, we'll double your damage, but only for this specific thing. This is just like it's all getting doubled. We're just doing double to everything.
All right. Oh, back to me. Banner of Kinship. So 5 mana artifact. As this artifact enters, choose a creature type. This artifact enters with a fellowship counter on it for each creature you control of the chosen type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1 for each fellowship counter on this artifact. So this reads like a coat of arms, but a lot of
Is
weird
it not
differences.
coat of arms?
No, so it's only for you, so you don't
so you
die.
don't die.
To this.
Yeah.
And then and like when you play it, you get the buff then and there, and that buff is static. So if you get Wrath or you play more creatures or whatever, it doesn't change it. And then you have to choose a type. So you can't flip-flop between types, or if you have like some weird, different, like your opponent's playing a zombie deck and you have a zombie, you actually benefit from that from Coat of Arms.
Mhm.
So do they.
I think
but
this is
yeah.
a worse Coat of Arms,
Oh,
but I think it's still really
Worse.
good. I think Coat of Arms is still
Interesting.
better, but you play this as like the second Coat of Arms. And Coat of Arms, I think, is a very expensive card if I remember right. Right?
Is it?
So, I
It's
think
also
so.
5 mana. Oh, you mean
No,
like
like
price-wise?
dollar-wise. Coat of Arms is like
Oh.
a $20
Is it?
card, right? Banner of
Oh,
Is
Kinship,
it?
pre-sale 7, so
Oh,
it's gonna
shit.
go way down, right? So this is a much cheaper card than Coat of Arms as well. But I think Coat of Arms is still number 1, and here's the reason. You can pivot from Coat of Arms, right? So like, let's say you have Field of Dead in your deck, right? Coat of Arms can buff your main. Let's say you're playing vampires or something, right? But that plan goes awry and you're making Field of the Dead zombies at this point. Coat of Arms still buffs that, right?
No.
You can benefit from your opponents. You can use it as a political tool to buff someone else's creature so they kill someone else. So I feel Coat of Arms has a lot more play, but they're close. And I can see arguments for running Banner of Kinship, right? Because I've also died in my own Coat of Arms many times, right? Like it has downsides as well. But what do you guys think? Better or worse than Coat of Arms?
This I was gonna say
Better.
rip Coat of Arms. I think this is actually like better than Coat of Arms for actually the reason you mentioned. So the big downside of Coat of Arms is it buffs your opponent's stuff, and depending on the matchup, that can be a really big problem. I think the other huge upside is that the buff sticks around, because one thing we've learned from Coat of Arms is it's not a card that you can just run out, right? If you just run out Coat of Arms on turn 5 with a couple of creatures and you're like, I'm gonna build up a board and eventually it's gonna get big, that always backfires. You gotta wait until you have the big board, then you play the Coat of Arms and try to Alpha Strike. You play this the same way, but if it goes wrong, you can't Alpha Strike, you get fogged, and then someone Wrath of Gods, you're still going to have that buff for all of your future creatures, which is huge compared to Coat of Arms. So I think Coat of Arms is like close to this, and I think you're right that it has more play to it because of its archaic wording of pumping all your opponent's stuff. Like, it does weirder things, but I think just power level wise, I think Banner of Kinship is actually just the stronger of the two cards in most decks.
Banner of Kinship is definitely the better one, but I will say there are situations that Coat of Arms has that I like, where maybe you need 2 attack forces to take down somebody. There are politic like angles from having Coat of
true.
Arms where you buff your opponent's board, which I think does merit some respect, right?
Yeah.
But I do think in most situations, Banner of Kinship will be better.
I love this card. Richard, are you not just jamming this in birds? I feel like this is like the
No.
best overrun for birds.
No.
You have a bunch
You
of
play
land
Coat of
birds,
Arms and birds?
Birds is Coat of Arms, and then Beastmaster Ascension. Beastmaster Ascension only 3.
Okay, that one.
And I already have Evasion. But I don't know, man. Like, you guys don't play like Martial Coup, right? Like, whatever. Let's say you're playing like a white halfling deck, right? And you may use Martial Coup to rat the board. Now you have all these 1/1s. Now your pump effects can pump the 1/1s to kill someone. And I feel this lasting after the wrath is actually very bad for you. Because when you get like full wrath, right? Like you full sent dead, you're no longer the threat, you're left alone. Like he's been neutralized, he's lost like 50,000 cards, leave him alone. With a +6/+6 Banner of Kinship on the battlefield, they're still gonna kill you. So it's kind of like the Door of Destinies card. So Door of Destinies is like an artifact, and every time you play the creature type, it gets a counter, and they all pump by the number of counters. I never play that anymore, right? Because it's an onboard overrun, and people see how scary you're getting, and they'll murder you before like anything happens. So I feel the Banner of Kinship buffing post wrath is actually bad for you. Like you want everyone to leave you alone, so you have time to rebuild.
No.
I'm not
if
gonna...
I get Wrath, I want my creatures to be big when I replay them, not little. Like, that's so counterintuitive. Like, I get what you're saying, but
But
I
you're
feel
gonna
like
get
the
killed. Like,
upside
you're not
of,
gonna
like,
get the chance to do that anymore.
No,
but
right?
how
No,
are
you
you
have
gonna
a
kill me
you'll
if
have
my
a walking.
creatures are 10/10s or whatever
Yeah.
instead of 2/2s? Like, my creatures are
Yeah.
so big, I should be able to hopefully defend myself. Would be my argument, I guess.
If
Like,
I
It's
get
called the falling over dead strategy, right? When the bear comes at you, you just fall over and you're like, you got me, right? And hopefully the bear leaves you alone. And then
Yeah.
you get up, you get your gun, and then you go through the thing, right? Like, if you're like, oh no, let's fight back, and the bear just mauls you to the ground, right? Like,
Okay.
when
I
you
don't
get
know
got,
what-
you gotta just be like, oh, white flag, gotta rebuild, see you later.
I don't know what wizardry you use, Richard, but if I have a big army and it gets wrapped, I know that I'm going to be smashed until I'm dead. So I'd much rather, if I get wiped, I play my whatever thing I have left. It's like an 8/8. And I'm like, all right, I'm good. Like I can block. That's important to me. I'd much rather that than be like, okay, I play a 1/1, and it's like, oh, well, he's got nothing. Kill him. I'm like, no,
He's got
I
nothing,
only have
leave
a
him
1/1,
alone.
please.
He's gotta leave him alone, right?
No, they're never gonna leave you alone.
So do you just play both this and Coat of Arms in the decks that would want them? Like, is this the type of card that you can afford to play more than one of in your deck, or do you think there's too much competition?
So most likely, this is the best card I'll never play again. So most likely,
God.
it'll be
Is
like
this
number
a
one.
category you've just invented?
I think so, right? Like number one would be Coat of
So
Arms.
bad it's good.
Number two would be like Moonshaker Cavalry or
Boom
like,
pile.
like something something that gives you the evasion, right? And then that's typically it. Like you don't play like 4 of these in your deck, right? You're gonna get flooded, right? You just play 1 or
Yeah.
2. So like in birds, I play Rally the Wings, Beastmaster Ascension, Coat of Arms. That's it. Right. And this doesn't fit in there. If I play Kithkin or something, it's gonna be Coat of Arms, Moonshaker. That's it. So it's a very strong contender, but I only have so many deck slots, so it's probably not gonna make it. But I wouldn't fault you for playing this over Coat of Arms or something. I'm like, yeah, that seems perfectly
Yeah.
reasonable, right? So like I said, it's a very good card, and I will most likely very rarely ever play it. Also goes Burr in like doubling season decks, proliferate decks. Like these are +1/+1 counters. So you or not the fellowship counters, but you can like increase them, right? So there are different synergies that you can do to make this better.
Kitty.
Seth.
All right. We have a sleeper card here. I'm very curious what you guys think of this one. So this is a card that caught my eye. Have heard a lot of people talking about it, but that card is Fae Trickster. So it's a 4-mana 4/2 fairy wizard with flash and flying, and it says you may cast spells as though they had flash. So it's a Leyline of Anticipation, a Vedelkin Ori, one of these cards that gives you mass flash. The upside of this card is that it itself has flash. And the closest comparison I could think of is a card called a Final Word Phantom from Murders at Karlov Manor Commander, which is flash and flying, and it says during each opponent's end step, you can cast spells as though they had flash. I think the upside of this card, and the upside of not just having flash, but surprise flash, is that you can use this to set up combo kills out of nowhere. We just actually had a game on Commander Clash where Richard comboed off during my end step or something by using a land, right? Use one of the lands that can give all your stuff flash. But I feel
Alchemist
like
Refuge.
yeah, Alchemist Refuge. I feel like this can do the same thing where you can have this card in hand. You will not look scary at all because no one will know what's coming. And then at the right moment, when people are tapped down on someone's end step, you flash this in, you flash in your combo pieces, you flash in your big play, and you just win the game by surprise. So I really, really like that this not only gives everything flash, but it has flash so you can be super sneaky with it. So I feel like I wouldn't play this in every deck, but in a flash deck or in a combo deck where I'm looking to like be able to combo off when I'm not going to be disrupted, I feel like this card's really good in those decks.
I mean,
Yeah.
this lets me play at instant speed. It's a fairy. This card is for me, right? This card they made this for me. I love this card. Foundations, I did not expect to see a fairy here. It's kind of funny because I feel like this fairy helps makes the last 2 years worth of fairies now play like actual fairies. So, I am excited. I'm very excited to see this card. And playing at instant speed is always nice.
I like this one a lot. I like it enables flash, but it has flash. That's like the huge thing. Yeah, it's a creature, so yeah, we'll die to board blah 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 blah. But I like the design. It's really good. And it's also like the benefit from flash too is just like if people try to swing in at you, they're like, "Whoa!"
Oh.
But what if he has a blocker? What if he has a blah 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 blah? Blah. And like it's like the mental game on it.
Wait.
On top of that is like it
Leyline?
actually
Leyline of Anticipation is the best propaganda in all of Magic.
It
I'm
really
pretty
is.
sure. Just putting that on
You
the
don't play so
battlefield,
scared.
no one will ever attack you.
I was gonna say I stopped playing Leyline of Anticipation because you get it out, right? And everyone's like, oh my god, it's got a Leyline. And then you're just like, I'm just gonna end of turn explosive vegetation, guys. Everyone thinks you're gonna like do something crazy. So I like the fact that this doesn't have to sit on board giving away your plan. Like
Yeah.
people are always scared of flash, so you can just play your whole game, and then when you're about to win, you can just hold this up. People will think you have Psych Rift or something, maybe. Maybe
Yep.
that's bad. Maybe that's fine. Maybe they won't attack you. You just be like, a Psych Rift if you attack me, right? And then you end of turn, do this, drop your combo piece, untap, win the game, or even win the game at instant speed. Shimmer Mirror comes to mind. That's an artifact that has flash that gives all your
Only for
artifacts
artifacts,
flash.
right? Yeah.
There's also like Quicken, which lets you cast a sorcery. There's one for creatures too.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
there's Flash, which is
Vivian?
actually banned as well. I actually want to use Flash just to
Liberator.
flash in my creatures. Not do Hulk Flash,
No
but
combo.
it's banned. There's one other one. I think it's from Lord of the Rings that lets you flash into a creature. or
Born
something.
Upon
So-
the Winds, I
Yes.
believe. Yeah.
So I actually have played all those cards like semi-recently. So High Fae Trickster seems like right up my alley. Seems like a better ley line because the ley line just gets you killed basically. So I like doing this when you want to do it. So it's super sweet.
All right. So I don't really often bring up green cards. But this one is too damn cute in like a terrible Furby way and Gremlins way. It's Loot. Exuberant Explorer, 2 and a green. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Yes. 4 green, tap it. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands you control from among them and put it on the battlefield. Shuffle the rest, the bottom in any random order. So, whether or not I'm excited just because it's Loot, it's cute. All right, cool. Let's see how this plays. In reality, I think this is busted. Also, like I think this card is going to be a problem. I think that they have cracked. They made it seem like, oh, it's less offensive than Azusa because you only get 1 additional land every turn. But the fact here is that you will now be able to spend 6 mana and dig through your deck. And whereas Azusa just sat there after you ran out of lands, Loot will be able to continue the party train. Now, I personally like Loot, so I'm kind of battling my demons here because, I like Loot, but I despise mono green. If this were blue green, acceptable. If this were any other color than just mono green, I would love it and love it easily. But because it's just mono green, I am conflicted, but at the same time, enjoying how cute its heroic pose is. And on top of that, its gameplay functions are really good.
What do you guys think of this style of ramp? I feel like when it comes to like ramping, in most of my decks, I'm playing like the Nature's Lore effects, like the tutor land, the open the way effects. What do you think about extra land drops? Because technically they are adding extra lands to the battlefield, right? You got some risk that you got to have an extra land in hand. If you don't, then it's not ramping. What do you think of these effects in general in Commander, though? Like, am I missing out by not playing more Zeus's? Because I just tend not to play those cards that often.
Yes.
I can understand
I-
Azusa, but Loot, I think, fixes that.
Because of the second ability, you think that's
Yeah.
what puts it over the top? I can see that. Okay.
Well, like I think like 2 of the strongest cards in green that just are underplayed, probably because they're super expensive. But I think people undervalue them too. Is Burgeoning and Exploration. Like I've just been jangling them on my decks. I think these cards just keep getting better every single year because the card draw quality of all our decks keeps getting better and better as we just keep getting better options. And also, we keep getting all this nonsense with like bounce lands and whatever, and then those get better. Those make the additional things better too. So I think like additional land on each of your turns every single year, it just keeps getting more and more ridiculous because like if I just keep efficiently drawing more and more cards, well, guess what? A certain percentage of that, almost half, is going to be lands. So I'm just always going to get more and more value out of these. And these are they're costed at a much more aggressive rate than like an actual rampant growth effect. So I think they're just like busted. Like Burgeoning and Exploration are just like 2 of the strongest cards in green, and I just don't see them that much.
This card is a mistake. I think this is the Uro problem, right? Like
No, he's so cute though.
So we've seen this. We've seen Azusa go wild so many times on Clash, and we've seen it so many times fizzle out. Like Phil is like, turn 3, I have like 8 lands on the battlefield. I'm done. I have no hand, and that's it. I pass. Right? Loot gets around that. Right? The downside of ramp is at some point you flood with ramp when you're past the ramping point, essentially. Right? Like you've over ramped, and now you keep drawing ramp, and that's what's supposed to balance it out. Uro broke this because it kept drawing you cards and was a beater, right? Like that actually was your win con. Loot is your win con here. Once you have gassed yourself out, you've ramped everything possible, you can now just sit there and spin loot to keep going. So I think loot is stronger than Azusa in a generic deck. I guess if you're like super landfall heavy, you could do it, but sometimes you don't draw that fetch land, you don't draw that bounce land, you run out of lands like super fast, and then that's it. Loot ensures that doesn't happen, and loot ensures you hit one of those creatures that will then draw you a bunch of cards to keep this train going. So I don't know if I'll start playing loot, but if
Is
you
this
were to play one of these,
The best card you'll ever play.
because I just opened the way, guys. It doesn't
Yeah.
get wrapped. But
The
if
new
if
rich
I were considering
category.
Azusa for my deck, I would be looking at loot. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if I was trying to go for one of these styles of decks, like a super landfall heavy deck, I'd be looking at loot. But I think in a general sense, I would still rather just 3 visits into Open the Way. And if you really want cute furball, you can play Omen Path Journey to get the cute furball
to get the
arc
art out
going
there.
while doing the land ramp, right? So
I will say
Yeah.
I like that it's a 1/4. That's another upside compared to like something like Azusa, where you actually have a big enough butt that you can like block some. Well, we've just seen the me
so
and my
unnecessary, overpowered 1/4 to block everything.
but my like dirtily starts of
Dude.
Commander, where I just want to ramp and draw cards, and then people wise up to that and start beating you down in the early game. Loot's pretty good in the sense that like it'll sit out there and ramp you and soak up like some reasonable attacks over the first few turns, I think. So I like that part of it too.
Stuff's a dousing dagger attack. This is why,
It
this
does-
is why we
never
got to start the
flipping,
hate
never
campaign
flipping.
here.
love that.
it's never flipping. All right, it's over. Last card for the podcast.
Okay. I gotta go back to the waifus. I'm sorry. It's this one is Neerdiv, Devious Diver. This is a 3-mana blue legendary creature merfolk rogue. It's a 2/2, and whenever it becomes tapped, this is for crims out there. Target player mills cards equal to its power. Ooh la la. And then, whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard or activate an ability of a card in your graveyard, draw a card and put a +1/+1 counter on Neerdiv. So Neerdiv is basically like, if you're doing graveyard things, if you're casting spells, activating abilities, if you're doing like a flashback deck, if you're doing like undergrowth or underworld breach stuff, or I don't know what even the activated abilities would be, but if you're doing those too, you get to just draw a lot of cards and make a really, really huge creature. And then whenever it taps, like let's say you use like a Springleaf Drum or something to tap it for mana or something. First, I think you probably want to mill yourself to get more stuff in your graveyard so you can get more card draw and stuff. But I guess like if you do get it big enough, you could just like tap mill somebody to death, which is funny. I think this is if for 3 mana, it's slam dunk to me.
Are you Crib? Did you body swap with Crib?
No, I'm not making a mill deck. I don't want to mill myself. This is like a self mill deck. But if it gets big enough, I mean, why not, right?
There's actually a lot of synergies for this. Like, when you think it through, this is a super unique commander. I don't think we've had a commander that really cared about the same thing, like activating abilities and casting stuff from the graveyard. But when you think about like unearth effects, encore, there's a lot of these mechanics that like specifically work from the graveyard. And if this is your commander, it's going to be drawing you a huge amount of cards and getting big really, really fast. Plus you got like Snapcaster Mage effects, so you can flashback spells. So I think this is actually one of the most unique build around commanders that we got from the entire set. So I'm hyped for this one too. I think it's just like super cool. I don't know if it's like super strong because I think it's going to make you play a lot of janky cards to trigger its ability. But those are the best commanders, right? That make like these weird unplayable cards staples in a certain deck. So I think it's going to be one of the cooler commanders from the set.
Card's gas. This card is so gas, right? Like, oh god, it mills. They
No.
added more mill stuff.
It
Like, this
mills.
is awesome.
Are you
This
gonna make a
card
mill
is-
deck out of it?
Honestly, like it goes in the deck, right? It goes in my mill deck. We've gotten so many new mill tools, and yeah, the waifus this set all kind of are really powerful. They are absurdly powerful, and this is another
Broke
unique effect that I don't think we're used to seeing. So I'm excited to play with it. And like again, look at the little treasure chest the Merfolk Rogue is holding. This is going to be sweet to play with. I can't wait. To
Treasure
try
is
it.
card draw.
Yeah, yeah.
I have no comment on this card other than Tomer, are you a Nami main in League of Legends? Is this how
No,
we explain this? There's a
I was an
mermaid
Ezreal
thing
main.
going on.
No, I was an Ezreal main.
You know, we've had so many
I respect
merfolk,
Nami though.
but not many like of this art style, right? Like so this is a first for us. So I'm here for it. I don't know about I feel Seth is right that you're gonna play a lot of janky cards to try to draw one card and boost its power. You're like, oh, think twice. Cast a graveyard, draw two card. I'm like, that's still not above rate.
I
So,
think
I don't
there has
know.
to be like combos of it for one. But
Like
number two
with the
is
game combo or synergy.
yeah. No, combo. Like probably like I don't know. If you can
What's the
if you can
combo?
activate something for like 0 over and over again, I don't know. Whatever.
Oh,
But the main thing is, I was just gonna put it in my Melik deck because my Melik deck is it's a Spellslinger Graveyard Voltron deck, but it's very heavy on flashback, and I always get like Paths and Flames or something to like win the game, and this will be the engine to just like vroom, just vacuum up a ton of cards into my hands. And it's just like, yeah, I run like Quiet Speculation. I run a whole flashback package with it. So it's going to be sick there.
if you're gonna pass in Flames and Breach, did you really need to draw extra cards? like,
Yes.
hasn't the game been won already?
Yes.
The game has been won already, right?
I want to kill you in style. It's funny.
All right. So that concludes our top cards from Foundations. Let us know in the comments. What did we hit on? What did we miss? Any secret cards that we're missing? Any waifus that Tomer missed here? Actually, Twinflame Tyrant has a Japanese art style too. So,
Who's
A
there
waifu
art for
dragon?
Twinflame?
well, I don't know. Are you versed in dragon culture? I don't want to make declarations on what's a waifu or not, Tomer.
I can
But
see
we
it.
know
I can see it.
There's the
You know
special
what?
treatment.
I'm not passing
You get
judgment.
fracture foiled Twinflame Tyrants in Japanese. Let us know. Curious what you think about our cards, and let us know what we missed, and we'll see y'all back here next week.